Welcome to Scottish Summit 2021. I'm Ben Vollmer, and I'm joined here today by the awesome Marcia DeCat. And we're here to talk about assets, customer service, field service, or asset management. So welcome to the show. We couldn't be here without these awesome sponsors. So again, thank you so much to ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Hitachi, Agilysys, and of course, Redspire. I'm joined today, and he's going to come in here in a few minutes, on the back half by Marcia DeCat, who's a global black belt for Dynamics 365 Field Service, covering the Americas. I'm Ben Vollmer. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product Management at IFS. And so we're going to talk about assets today. This is my alter ego, Beast from X-Men. It also matches his Allison's hair, in case you were curious. So when we think about high-performing companies, right? When we think about companies that really do well in the market, that have good customer experience, good user experience, a good stable place to be, really what we can think about is really three things. And so what I would say is, let's really think about three things. One is asset performance. How do we make sure the assets we have are the highest performing we can possibly have? That's, of course, top of mind for every company and everybody who does something like that. Next, I would say is, what's our customer experience? How has our customer experience been? What's our customer experience looking like? How do we make it better? And last but not least, of course, is workforce excellence. How do we make sure that our employees have the right skills, are doing the right things, in both a capacity as well as capabilities perspective? And so when we think about the view of assets, if you kind of go back in time, and so if you're old like I am, you might have a potentially outdated, but also very simplistic view of the world, which is really, if it's in a factory, it's enterprise asset management, and it's asset performance management. If it's in the field, it's field service management, and never shall the two meet. Those are two different things, two different people. And really what we've seen over the past 3, 4, 5, 10 years is actually customers have really demanded and are going towards a different direction with this than this very outdated, simplistic view of the world. Gartner actually has a great slide. It's called Blurring the Lines. And really Gartner's perspective in one of the research notes was really that you have contact centers. So contact centers have to create work orders, they have to schedule demand. They also need to keep track of assets. So we're going to show you some of that and what's in connected customer service in Dynamics 365 from Marcio. Of course, field service has assets. Now, field service assets and enterprise asset management assets might be different assets, or they might be the same assets. And so you kind of think of like the business application layer at the bottom, and really on the top are really some other areas you see, like asset performance management. How do I make sure those assets are performing properly, correctly, in the right way, the right place, the right time? And of course, assets have locations. We're going to get some location stuff here in a few minutes, but assets have locations, but that might be stored in a separate database. You might, for example, be using something like Esri to manage all the asset stores. There's lots of places you can put, and of course, mobility, of course, is also a key part of this. So really you have kind of the back end, the back office, and kind of the front end, and then you have this middle between where things are really shared. Now they may not be shared fully, they might be shared partially, but what we're going to talk about today is how do you really share those objects, and how should you be thinking about these as you think about your system design across your application and asset lifecycle. No chart would be complete without a Venn diagram, and just so you kind of think about the right-hand side of some things that field service does really well. The left-hand side is some things that asset management does really well. Kind of the center are things that both of them do together, or should do together. And so we're not going to dwell on this here, but when you think about this, don't necessarily think about either or. Think about an and conversation here across all these different areas. Now, what's important to think about is types of assets. Now, I'm not talking about your 401k and your checking account and your savings account. I'm talking about what kind of assets are there in the world. How do we think about assets? And so the first thing you can think about is really fixed plant. And that would be production machinery, production equipment, and all of its subcomponents. So if you've ever, one of the coolest things I've ever been to is I went to Germany and toured the BMW factory where they built the 3 Series. And they have a whole bunch of fixed plant assets in there. It's really kind of components and subcomponents that actually build the 3 Series. So that's a type of asset. Another type of asset is a linear asset. Now, just like its name implies, they're in a line. Now, they're in a straight line, not always, but what are some linear assets you can think about? Well, some roads would be a linear asset. A pipeline would be a linear asset. Electric and gas lines would be a linear asset. Rail lines would be a linear asset. So really things that don't have necessarily a fixed point, but might be a set of lengths would really be a linear asset. Next up, you have a fleet. Now, what makes a fleet different? They're mobile. Okay, they don't sit in one place. You know, so one of the terms I just learned here at IFS is a term called VIM, like vehicle information. No, it's vehicles in motion. They're mobile all the time. They have rolling stock. They generally are repeated. So again, as much as your car salesman might want to tell you this, that car you're going to buy, there's another car that was made just like it 10 minutes later, come off the same line. So they're repeated. So there's a whole lot of, you buy one Ford F-150, it looks just like the next Ford F-150 that comes off the line. Or if you're anti, you buy one cheap Seat, you can go buy with Skoda. You can buy one cheap Skoda, you replace another cheap Skoda. And they're replaceable. The last type of facility is actually one we don't really think of as an asset. Think about real estate and facilities, office buildings, retail stores, barracks, universities, hospitals, any place you have a lot of equipment. Now, your house could be an asset or a liability, depending on which way you look at it, but that's really a different way of thinking about it. What we're really talking about here is really real estate and facilities could be a type of asset. So when we think about assets, you have to almost overlay this picture on top of the previous picture, because you might talk to somebody, they might be talking about enterprise asset management in the context of storing the data for the fixed plant, not in the context of being a technician from 30 miles away to drive in to fix that fixed plant. So you almost have to think about the type of asset as well as the asset location, as well as the type of work you're doing on that asset when you're actually thinking about your solution all up for a customer or yourself. So I like to start things off with glossaries. You know, what are we here doing? Why are we here? What's this look like? What's this thing do? So when we think about kind of the context that we're talking about here, a product is a physical item. So my water bottle here is a product. Okay, it carries in my truck, but it can then turn into an asset, a sub-asset, a part, or even a consumable. Now, an asset, we just talked about that, that's an asset of an organization. Your vehicle could be an asset. We'll talk about this in a second here more in depth. And assets can either be fixed or moving, as we learned earlier. But then each asset can have sub-assets. Now I'm going to pause there for a second and say, I've seen literally hundreds of customers with these conversations, and no two customers have tracked product, asset, and sub-assets identically. They all have different rules around what they want to track for assets, what they want to track, how they want to track it. So just you kind of think about this. This is not a one size fits all or one size fits most. This is a whatever you got to do to make this work for your customer. There's going to be some nuances here through these. A device. So in Microsoft speak, a device would be an IoT sensor. So this right here is a device. This device can be attached to an asset. Now, one asset can have multiple devices, or can have a single device, or you can have many-to-manys. So we'll talk about this in a few minutes here, but just so you think about, devices are really the ability or the connection of IoT into that asset. Category, that's really the type of information you want to have. You might want to manage categories to track, I want to see all of my trucks, I want to see all of my cars, I want to see all of my pipelines, I want to hear different ways to categorize and track these things. And last but not least, agreements. And agreements are really around how do I schedule and manage preventive maintenance. Now, we're not going to get into today's conversation, but there's a whole different art, if you will, around agreement and predictive maintenance management that we can talk about. Let's talk about locations. So locations generally fall into two distinct categories. We'll talk about the first one, then we'll talk about the second one. So, and by the way, there's also a blending where you put them two together. So the first one is really functional location. So the example of a functional location would be the Microsoft campus, building 43, conference room 131. So the hierarchy would go campus, building, room. Or you could have factory assembly line finishing area. It's generally a hierarchy of where that asset sits in the building, especially when you have buildings that might span city blocks. A geospatial location is a whole different thing. That's usually a point location, but sometimes it can be a polygon or linear. So what I mean by that is, I have a client one time who actually had a group, they wanted to define an asset as a cluster of trees. So they would actually draw on a mapping solution where their trees were and what those trees were doing. So some ways to express kind of functional geospatial locations would be latitude and longitude, what you're used to seeing, which is here on the screen. You can also do something like what three words. Matt Beard's written a nice little connector to what three words. You can actually do a Power Automate to converts latitude and longitude into what three words and what three words back into latitude and longitude. And then Google Plus also has a plus code, which is kind of a takeoff, if you will, of the what three words. It's a series of JVR7 plus W6, Redmond, Washington, equates back to that geospatial location that is one Microsoft way. So locations are not always what we think they are, and a lot of times locations can be moving, and sometimes customers just want to track assets location, because there's actually a huge ROI just in tracking asset location. Now, let's talk about asset hierarchy. And again, every customer you talk to, if you're a customer, if you're like, why does nobody understand me? It's probably because, well, you're different like everybody else is. It's a thing. Some industries track it very similarly, but I've never seen a customer track the exact same assets the same way different times. Let's start with the asset. So the asset, by the way, if we want to talk about this more, and you're a geek and you're a nerd, you want to go learn some more, ISO 55000 through 55003 actually have all of the specifications that were required for what an asset is and how you define an asset. So if you get bored one day and want to cure your insomnia, it's really, so the first thing on the pyramid of assets is really the use and location. So the category, the location, which could then be your functional location, and then the system is part of. So you might have a giant system that is a factory line. That might be a system that's in a plant, that's in a location, that's part of a category. And then you really have kind of the equipment products, which is the equipment unit. So in this case here, it's a forklift. That's the equipment unit. And the subunit might be the hydraulic controls. So, and again, you can track just the forklift. You could track the forklift plus all of the subunits, or you can track all the forklift subunits, and then the components and maintainable parts, which in this case would be the sump pump, the control valve, and the relief valve. Generally, I say the word generally here, you would not track things like parts and consumables as part of your asset hierarchy. Why? Because they're just that. They're parts and consumables. You're not going to track your hydraulic fluid. You're not going to track your oil filter. Now, assets have lots of relationships. You have asset to sub-asset. So you can say, give me this asset and let me see all the sub-assets. And those sub-assets can be at different locations too, which is also helpful for, I'm looking for an HVAC system or heating and air system or a boiler system where there's assets at different places. That asset or sub-asset is then tied to a product. Why would you want to do that? Give me a list of all the places I've sold this water bottle to, and I want to go service them, or I want to go send a marketing campaign. Each one of the assets is then assigned to a service account. Assets are then assigned to work orders or cases, which are then also covered by SLAs, agreements, entitlements. And then last but not least, of course, you have IoT data flowing in. So assets itself, the data on assets you're going to see, especially in Dynamics 365, is very meager, but there's a ton of relationships there that really help drive value for customers. So what's a simple connected asset look like? And again, if you've been through Connected Field Service Workshop with me before in the past, you've seen this and it gets pretty depth and detail, but let's just go through two scenarios in the few minutes we have here. So product is sold to a customer. So I sell this product to a customer, it changes hand, it goes in there. You then turn that product into an asset. And then you have one IoT device on that asset. It registers, creates a device, creates a linkage, and all that data flows through IoT Hub. So that's a very easy explanation of a simple connected asset. But then you can also do many more things with that simple asset. So for example, you can pull telemetry data. So every 6 seconds, my device is sending data up to Azure IoT Hub. I'm doing anomaly detection on it, but I can also do things like send device properties, device settings, and device tags, which actually help you manage and maintain that device. And then you can send things back like device properties and commands, and then get things back down to the device through device properties and commands again. So you can actually maintain and manipulate the equipment and the asset through this IoT to device mapping. So an example of that would be a device property could be reported as latitude and longitude through IoT Hub. It comes in as a JSON field, gets dropped off in Dynamics 365, and as you can see, there's a device properties area. It can pull device properties at will, so you can have it pull device properties every 30 minutes, every 4 hours, twice a day, on device property changes, whatever you want to do there. This is all easily configurable in the connected field service setup for you. So we showed you a simple asset. What about a more complex one? So this is actually, again, this is covered by ISO standard. This is actually a Teletech DC teleoperation robot. Now, if you look at this, it's actually got some pieces to it here. So we have a Microsoft Connect at the top of it. We've got another camera down below it. We've got a GPU or CPU right powering it below. We've got a control panel. So you actually have, so even though it's one asset, you actually have multiple products and multiple assets tied into that on the left-hand side. So on the left-hand side, you have kind of the asset view and the sub-asset view. On the right-hand side, you have the sensor view or the devices view. And as you can see, there's not a one-to-one mapping between them. You can actually sensor one asset and get data, device data from another part of the asset or another different asset. So it's pretty important for you to think about your design structure of assets across the board. Now, I've talked here for 15, 20 minutes now, and I've talked about the theory and the design and the way you build assets. Now I'm going to turn over to Marcio, and he's going to talk now about how do you actually use these assets in different areas across the Dynamics 365 family of products, from customer service to field service to asset management. So with that, take it away, Marcio.
All right. On this scene about assets and customer service, I'll be pretending I am a customer service representative within Contoso Coffee. Contoso Coffee sell and serve smart devices like smart coffee machines and vending machines that dispense products, and also provide market service for office and buildings like Microsoft. Like when you go to an office building, you have self-service coffee machines and self-service vending and dispensers. This is the type of service that we provide at Contoso Coffee. So my day started, and I'm looking here for the work that I have to go through my day, and I noticed that there is a new case here for me that's about a coffee machine that's not brewing. So I'm going to drill down on this case, and I noticed that this is it's a case opened by my important customer, Microsoft, at Advantage A building. As you notice here, the system based on the case title already suggesting some potential knowledge-based articles that can help me address this specific problem. You can also notice here that this case is associated with a specific customer asset. So this asset, it's a smart coffee machine, Flavia model barista, and I already can see some meaningful information about telemetry data sent automatically from the devices to IoT Hub and then coming here to Dynamics. So there is the average temperature, the humidity on this device. There is historical IoT alerts coming from this device. You're going to see more about the relationship and alerts on the field service scene. And there are other cases open around that specific asset. So the goal here is I want to try to solve the customer problem without the need of rolling out a truck. I don't want to send a field technician if I don't need to. So I will try to see if it is possible to solve this problem remotely. So for some devices, it's possible that I send a reset command, and this would solve the problem for the customer. But before I take an action of sending a command, the way to do this, I would just come here and pick up a template of a command. As Ben mentioned, a command is a piece of JSON that we're sending to that specific device, and that will that the method of what's happening on the device will affect the behavior of the device. Like could be a set command, could be an update of a firmware, some type of message that you want to send remotely. So if that was the case, I could just send a command to his set. But let me drill down and try to find more information before I send a command and try to find a resolution for this case. So one thing that I notice here is I want to make sure I'm talking about the right asset with the customer. I know that the customer told me in the email that's the coffee machine on the second floor, so I can take a look at asset and locations here. So what I'm looking here is the hierarchical information on the location, the function location second floor, and the different assets and devices that I have here. So as you notice, the Flavio Barista has two separate sensors, if you will, and there's other devices, a vending machine on the same function location that has all the types of subcomponents here. I want to take a look more about the second floor, where the service it is, and if I need to send a field technician, where it's located, or just to make sure I have the right visibility about this. So I'm going to double click on this specific location, and it's telling me that the service address here, I can again have a hierarchical view about the structure of other locations. And what I added here, I added a location map, something that will give me an indication that I'm talking about the right asset here. So in full transparency, what we are looking here is an embedded Power BI dashboard on Dynamics that it's associated, give me a visual indication about the map, the floor plan on the location of this asset. And then why not? This is the information, the telemetry information and properties could be available here on Power BI, and can already have some meaningful information showing that the capacity and the utilization of the trash bin components of the utilization of this coffee machine is reaching the capacity of the trash bin of the coffee machine. So this is already a good indication of the problem here that I have it. So back to the specific asset, I want, instead of sending a command now, I want to pull device data. So this I'm requesting Dynamics to, through IoT Hub, go to the device and bring me recent readings about properties on the device. So if I go to the specific properties here, I notice that the current property value is actually matching that indication here. This is not matching that specific dashboard, but you get the feeling here. So the trash bin use count here, it's at full capacity with the trash bin capacity. So, and also I noticed that the filter status that early this morning was clean, it's now dirty. So those are types of problems that, because of the connectivity of the device, I can understand that I don't need to send a field technician. This is a case that will be solved by educating the customer and send them a proper knowledge-based article on how to change the filter or how to empty the trash bin capacity. Empty the trash bin for that. Another thing that we can rely on the connectivity of this is I can look at the historical telemetry data about that specific device and that specific device connected on the asset. Right? Why this is meaningful? It's not only to solve the problem, it's meaningful because I can look at historical information on historical readings and telemetry data and cross this with historical service and cases that are associated with this device. So on this example here, there was a drop on humidity and temperature, and then a case was opened by the customer. Later on, the case was converted to a work order, and here a field technician solved the problem, and then the case is resolved here, right? So think about that the same way you can see the historical of problems happen. It's possible that you could look at a specific historical of telemetry data and notice that someone provide a work order or someone solve a case and send a command back to that device, and now I have an issue with that. So you can use for both ways to go back in time and understand what did I do to solve that problem, as well as maybe that service, when that person providing the service was actually what caused the problem, right? This is possible. So the value here is by overlapping telemetry data and device readings and properties about the device with service that you provide, historical of service that you provide with a device, you can use this information to provide a better service to your customers. So, all right. So at this point, we already know that the problem is regarding the trash bin capacity, and the filter needs to be changed. That would not affect the behavior of the machine. The resolution for this would be send a knowledge base article to the customer and educate the customer on how to do that. So let's go ahead and do that. The system already suggested one, the coffee maker is broken, is not working. We have some step instructions here. I guess this is not the right case for them, but I can look at coffee. Let's find it here. Replace filter. It's a useful knowledge base article that I'm going to send to the customer, and I'm going to go ahead and submit this to Marcel, and Marcel going to solve the problem by receiving this knowledge base article. So what I showed here is a couple of ways that you can leverage on the connectivity of your devices to solve your problem remotely. Like if some of devices may be smart enough to be able to receive commands, and those commands may be a resolution. Other devices that don't have this capability of receiving a command that will change their behavior, they may be able to actually provide meaningful information, so you can assist you to take a proper resolution for that, recommend a proper resolution for that specific case. And if you leverage the current situation with COVID, I think this gained a greater importance on right now, right? So you really want to avoid exposing your workforce to risk unnecessary. So if you can solve the problem remotely, great. You save on gas, you save on carbon footprint, and you also keep your workforce safer from that. So let's go to the other scene about field service. Now, let's take a look about serving assets from the point of view of a field service organization. So let's use Dynamics 365 Field Service now. This is my Field Service Administrator dashboard. I could have information about assets and device here, but I want to go straight to the point and take a look at the IoT alerts coming through Dynamics. The way they're coming here right now, I do have a simulator running that depends on how I change the simulator, change the signals that are going there. But there was and this can be grouped, all those alerts can be grouped in the same hierarchy if they belong to the same device and the same asset. So I'm gonna go into this IoT alert that I have here. There was a water leaking detected here. It's an alert that is already associated with a specific customer asset and an IoT device too. I can take a look at other information about the assets and historical of work orders that was provided on this asset. This is meaningful information. You can look at about other problems, similar problems and resolutions, and sometimes the who was the technician that solved the problem. And you can look at historical of commands, and similar to what we saw on the previous scene, you also have access to device readings and historical information here. So there is a spike on the temperature. There was a huge spike on humidity associated with that specific water leak. And I decided that this requires attention, and I want to create a case for that. So I'm going to use the business process flow, and I'm going to create a case for that IoT alert. I'm doing this manually, but this can be done automatically. Like there is ways that you can base on the information that are coming from the alerts, or the combination of alerts and properties with the device. You may want to make this an automatic process to create the case automatically. So in this case, I'm creating manually. So this is a case with a subject. This is regarding a vending machine. Is a case about a problem. And the customer is Microsoft Advanta A. Already Dynamics brought this information because the customer asset it's deployed at this customer facility location, at this account. if you will, and that's why the system already recognized that. So this came from an IoT alert. I don't have a case, but I think this is enough for me to go ahead and quick create a case. Now, at this point, the idea is I'm going to reveal some information about the case, and I will decide to create a work order, right? So it's a water leak. Water leak can damage the floor. I want to change the priority of this case to high because, like we know, water can damage things. The SLA of the case is already running, and I'm gonna get the primary incident type here. Maybe there is a leak. Let's find that is vending machine leaking. This is already the incident type for the right incident type for this case, and I want to go ahead and save it. And I'm going to now convert this case to a work order. So let's go ahead and create a work order. I already identify what is the service account that I need, the vending machine, and the priority of this. I again want this to be a P1 priority for the work order, and that's it. And go ahead and create that specific work order. I need to give a type here, and this will be a work order type. And now you notice that the case is now associated with the work order that we are creating. So from that IoT alert, you have full traceability around the information that it carries over, the information around the assets, the account information to the alert, to the case, and to the case to the work order. So now we do have a work order that it's potentially ready to be booked to a customer, and it is not showing the right form here, but that's just like demo gods not helping here while I'm doing this presentation. But I do have a work order created here. I can provide more instructions here, and what I wanted to bring your attention is that the work order is associated with that specific asset here. So now again, if I navigate to this asset, like we saw in the previous scene, I have full information about where this asset is located, and what is the function location. This one is on the 3rd floor, not on the 2nd floor, and it is a vending machine that's leaking over there. So the next step here is, from that alert, I quickly identified that this was a high priority case, and I want to quickly find it and dispatch this specific work order to an agent. So you probably saw in other demonstrations around field service, there is multiple ways you can schedule. You could even have resource schedule optimization automatically assigning this work order to the next available resource. You could use schedule assistance to find the right resource. But for the sake of this demonstration, I want to get that specific work order that we just created and associate it to myself. So I wanted to show you how this is going to look from the field service mobile app point of view. So at this point, I have a work order with that problem assigned to Marcio, the field technician. So let's take a look at how this we're going to look like from the field service mobile application. Okay, so let's go to the field technician point of view. This is my iPhone. This is my daughter Zoe. And let me open the field service mobile application. So first thing you notice here is the application is showing my calendar, how my schedule and my day looks like. It's important for me as a field technician that I have visibility of the work that I need to perform. And I notice here that there is a vending machine leaking here. That's the work order that I'm going to work. It is a problem that came from customer Microsoft and Advantage A. The field service mobile app gives me full visibility about customer data and other potential work orders that happened before, as well as asset and locations, as you saw in the previous scene on the customer service. Here on the mobile app, I also have visibility of the full hierarchy of assets and subassets and devices. But let's go back to the work order. So the work order tells me information about what's the customer asset that I need to serve, and as well as step-by-step instructions and how to perform my work. So if I click here on service, I can see what's the work that I'm going to have to perform once I am at customer location. So I'm going to go ahead and change the booking status to traveling. I'm traveling to customer, ready to perform this work. I'm going to fast forward in time now and pretend that I already arrived there, but the app gives me driving locations for that. And once I am at the customer, I'm able to start performing my work. Once there, I can follow the instructions that are coming here, and I can clean up the area and take pictures on the mobile app. You already know that. I can scan the customer assets to properly locate the asset, identify the asset. I'm going to show a different way you can scan here. There is plenty of information around scanning an asset. But here I want to bring your attention about inspections. Inspections are a feature for field service that lets people who understand how to properly inspect assets or site locations with a more like a what you see, what you get form. So to create this inspection form here, it doesn't require rocket science, doesn't require an IT department for that. It was someone with with basic drag and drop capabilities that were able to create a form like that. So maybe you already have inspections forms sitting on Excel forms or in Word documents. That's easy to convert those forms to something more modern that we're going to handle on this application like that. So first thing that I want to bring your attention is I'm also able on the inspections to scan a barcode here. So I have here another IoT device. So just pretend that this is a vending machine. So automatically scanned it and found the information for me. It's asking me if the machine is operating, if the power cable is connected. Then you have also the ability when serving assets to read information and collect information about your physical device. So the inspector is asking me here to provide a reading time and how many buttons with products that are not sold out that are still available there. So let's say that I'm seeing 10 buttons available and 5 of them are showing that the product it's sold out. So if this is a long inspections and you need to take reading multiple times, you can add rows here and keep adding those properties similar to device properties. You can collect information about assets too. And I can identify what is the model of the device. This naturally could be done automatically based on the device that we scanned on the specific device that I'm serving. Just to highlight that you can have like drop-down scenarios for create drop-down fields to inspect assets. I noticed that there is a water leaking that's visible for me, and there is an error code showing on the asset pane. So notice now that when I click on error code, it's providing me a field to inform what is the error that I'm noticing there. I guess the emoji is not ideal, so it's error. Let's say that's error 44. Oops. Error 444. And now I'm going to save my inspection form. So once this service is complete, I can also go ahead and check that this is done, and I can continue to finish my work order here. Another point that I would like to highlight is beyond the work order that is assigned to me, as a field technician, I may need to have full visibility around aspects of the customers that I serve and the assets that I'm serving to. So on the mobile app, I do have access to assets, IoT alerts, and IoT devices, the function locations, as we have on the desktop and web client of Dynamics. So if I go here to assets and search for that Flavia coffee machine that we saw on the first scene, even on the mobile application, I have access to the same information that we saw for the customer service representative, right, on that scene. So I have, here is the category of my assets. I can read the device properties as we saw on that first scene. I can see the historical of commands that we sent to that device and other access to other alerts that we have. So it's a true application that was built with the field technician in mind and how to empower them to better serve their customers. Let's do a quick recap about the scenes that we just saw. On the first scene, we show how you can leverage on Dynamics 365 for customer service to remotely serve an asset without avoiding sending a field technician on site. Like you're avoiding rolling out a truck, you're saving money, you're keeping your workforce safe. And that scene started with a case that was created by email. The representative was able to understand meaningful information about the asset with reading telemetry data about the asset and provide a resolution without converting to a work order, without sending even a field technician on site. On the second scene, what we saw in the second scene was a case initiated by an IoT alert that was enriched with meaningful information like knowledge-based articles associated with that incident. Then eventually that case was converted to a work order and then scheduled to the right technician. Now, we also showing like how the mobile app was created and tailored for the field technician. Like this was an investment from Microsoft to create a mobile application that will really empower the external workforce that you have, like people who are on the field. We show like the asset location and how you can how that feature and capability can assist your field technician to find the right location of the asset. And once he is in on site or in a big building for your customer, once he can initiate his work, he's able to follow simple step-by-step instructions and complete an inspection around that asset. So all that information will be posted back to the asset. So in the future, you can see how did you serve and how did you fix that problem. So I hope this was a meaningful information. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Ben, for this opportunity. I hope you have a great time at the summit.